Good evening everyone. A very warm welcome to yet another lecture series by Sri T.K. Jayaraman sir. So today we have Aristotle, an overview of his life and philosophy as the topic for today's lecture. While T.K. Jayaraman is a known personality for all of us over the years, a brief introduction about today's speaker. So Sri T.K. Jayaraman is an engineer by qualification. He also did his qualification. He is a qualified lawyer, and after his engineering he got admitted to the prestigious Indian Revenue Service in 1973 batch. He has been a teacher at our institute for both English as well as French for the last 5-6 years. He is also heading our reference library classification team for helping us with classifying the very rare books what we have, and also the entire set of books what we are keeping in our reference library. Sri T.K. Jayaraman is a man of varied interest. He is, as I said, by qualification an engineer. He also has done his law. He has multiple diploma degrees and as well as in management. He is a polyglot. He knows several languages. He is a proficient teacher in English and French at our own institute. Till date he has delivered more than 47 lecture series, mainly on Western philosophy, and he has also co-authored 3 books on philosophy. Today he is going to speak about Aristotle, and he has covered extensively Plato. Plato, who was the teacher of Aristotle, so he has covered it under Plato Dialogues, a series which ran for 2 years, and he has been delivering lecture every month. So on behalf of Indian Institute of World Culture and all of us here, a very warm welcome to you, sir, for yet another lecture series. And this particular lecture is being streamed on our YouTube channel, so I request all of you to subscribe for our ongoing lecture programs which are streamed online on our YouTube channel, and also people who are assembled here. So Aristotle, as we all know, is a great philosopher, a thinker, who lived in the 400 300 to 400 BC was his time period, and he actually was taught by Plato, and his philosophies are well followed even today and is a reference point. So today on Aristotle, an overview of his life and philosophy will be covered by T.K. Jayaraman. Over to you, sir. Hello, is it okay?
Keep it bent.
Sure, sir. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Arkali Prasad, for your nice introduction and kind words. Friends, all along I have been lecturing on Plato. I talked to you on several dialogues of Plato, and in the last lecture I spoke about Marcus Aurelius, a Stoic philosopher and a great intellect. For this month I have taken up Aristotle. Aristotle, you all must know that he was a disciple of Plato, like Plato being a disciple of Socrates. These 3 names are very great in ancient Greek philosophy. There is no educated person who does not know the name of Aristotle. In Greek language, the meaning of Aristotle, I have to tell you, it means best purpose. So it's really very interesting that God created Aristotle for the best purpose. That's about him. And he lived in the 4th century BC. That he was born in 384 BC in a place called Stagira. It is actually in the northern Greece, somewhere in the Macedonian area. Macedonia. So he was born there to fairly wealthy parents. His father was a physician to the king of Macedonia. So that's one of the reasons why Aristotle took a lot of interest in biology. That's what you have to understand. His father was a medical man. And of course he lost his father quite young, father and mother also. I think around when he was 13 or so, he lost them. But he was quite a well-to-do person. He was not a poor philosopher, not like that. He was quite wealthy. And around the age of 17, he went to Athens. Remember, Athens is in the south of Greece. Stagira is in the north. So it's quite far. But those days, Athens was at the pinnacle. It was at the summit of Greek civilization. All learning, art, culture. So it was the Athenians who shone in those fields. So he goes to Athens and he joins the Plato's academy. We all know that Plato had an academy where he was training all his disciples, all the students in philosophy and various subjects. So Aristotle goes there, and remember, he was there nearly for 20 years. So 20 years he was a student in Plato's academy, and he was one of the most brilliant students, collecting a lot of books. He was quite wealthy and he used his money to collect books. Books were expensive those days. They were in scrolls. Not the paper was discovered later. So he collected all of them. He was very meticulous, a very brilliant student. He had all his colleagues also. And one thing great about Aristotle is, he was not a passive receiver of knowledge. He used to question. He used to question even his master, who was Plato. That's why, you see, in the invitations which were sent to you for this talk, I specifically wanted them to include a very famous painting by Raphael, where you have Plato and Aristotle together in front of their academy. Of course, the other disciples are also there. And that painting is of great symbolic value. Why? Because in that you will see Plato pointing his fingers upwards, and Aristotle will be pointing the fingers downwards towards the earth. So this is now a picture is equal to 1,000 words. Surely so. Why? Because Plato's theory is all beyond. He did not much believe this world of senses which we feel, So his world is a world of form far removed from our ordinary everyday experiences. That is called the realm of forms, and which people find it difficult to believe and difficult to apprehend. Whereas by nature, Aristotle is down to earth. That is why he is pointing his finger towards the earth. I am of this earth. I don't want to fly to some other region. So this very wonderful, this picture, immediately it shows you the difference. Later we will learn this difference in detail. What exactly will be the difference. So this is just before I forget, I thought I have to tell you this. So he was, as I said, he was not accepting everything that Plato said. So he used to question. So that is one thing very, very important. Alright, 20 years he studied there. Then what did he do? At that time, what happened? Plato died. When Plato died, the head of the institution, academy, was not given to Aristotle, even though he was the most brilliant student. It was given to Plato's nephew. So Aristotle was little cut up. He was angry. So he left Athens and he goes to two places. One is Assos. There he established with his friend one academy, one school. Then he goes to another place called Lesbos, another island. There also he established an academy. But the most important thing he did there, it was actually the study of living things, both animals and plants. That's what you have to understand. He took an interest in the lives of animals and in the lives of plants. So it is not just theoretical speculations, but he actually collected a lot of specimens of animals. He dissected them. He studied the parts of the animals. He took meticulous notes along with his disciples. So he did a tremendous work. Same thing with plants also. So you see, he started his life, you can say in the modern parlance, like scientist. So you have to be the first scientist. He was a scientist. He was observing things. He was finding out the facts. He was collecting information. And from the information, he wanted to derive certain general principles. That's what the scientists do. They keep on observing things and then come out with a general law. Why? This should be like that. So that is what precisely he was doing in Lesbos. He was doing it. Tremendous research. Then, what happened? His renown, his fame spread far and wide. And the king of Macedonia, Philip, too, so he called him to his place. What for? He said, you have to tutor my son. And who was that son? It was none other than Alexander the Great. So, he comes here again Macedonia and he tutors 3 or 4 years. He tutors Alexander the Great along with some other princely, young people. So that was what he did. So 3-4 years. Of course, his influence on Alexander is entirely a different subject. But only one thing I wanted to tell you, that he told Alexander, where, his advice, it indicates, reveals certain, prejudices in Aristotle. What is the prejudice? He says, the Greek people are superior. They are superior. Their intellect, mind and all that. Others, these Greek people treated them as barbarians. So he told him, you treat the barbarians as they deserve. That's what he said. And Greeks are a special people. Of course, this prejudice is found among all the Greek. I can't only blame only Aristotle. It was there. The Greek people said other people are all barbarians. That's why the slavery was accepted in the Greek civilization. This is just in passing. It's not very relevant to the philosophy, but still I have to share this information with you. And that's how 3-4 years he was teaching Alexander the Great. Then afterwards, again he goes back to Athens. What did he do? There he started what is known as the great school, the research center called Lyceum. Lyceum, L-Y-C-E. Lyceum, whereas Plato called his school as Academy, Aristotle called it as Lyceum. And Lyceum was one of the greatest research centers, mainly meant for research. Now we have to come to, what exactly he did. So here only his greatness is revealed. If at all we can call somebody as a person, who spanned many fields, it was Aristotle. In fact, Dante, the Italian poet, called him as the master of those who know. So, knowledgeable people is the master of the knowledgeable people. That was the epithet given for Aristotle, and very many people have extolled, his wide interest. You will be, surprised to know, nothing which he did not leave. That is the greatness. What are the things he did? First of all, they say he was the father of logic. He was the father of logic. Logic is reasoning. It is not that, nobody reasoned before Aristotle. That is not the point. The point is, he established this as a separate discipline. Logic is important for us, for anybody. Logic is nothing but reasoning. So, what are all the rules of reason? So, he codified them. These are all the things, this is how to reason, and if you do this, you will fall into a fallacy, your reasoning will be false. So he completely codified, and that is why they say he was the father of logic. Actually, he did not call his compilation as logic, he called it organon. Organon in Greek means tool. So it is a tool that all thinking people should have. So he was the father of it. Even today, in schools and colleges, when they teach you Aristotle, they will tell you Aristotle is framer of reasoning, father of logic, and they will always say, they will give you a very elementary example which they called syllogism. The syllogism is something like that. It is a sort of inference from a general principle. So the most quoted example is, they will say, all men are mortal, all men are mortal. So that is the premise, assumption, which is based on our experience. We see everybody, any person dying, nobody lives forever. So a general statement is made, all men are mortal. Socrates is a man, so Socrates is mortal. Very simple, any child also will understand. So with steps, major premise, intermediary, then minor premise it's called, then the conclusion. That means he wanted to show from a valid premise, assumption, you can derive a valid conclusion. How it is done? He gives an elementary example, and he gives a lot of examples like that. He develops this subject, how to infer truths from valid premises. So this is very much used in science. Okay, this is a very elementary example. We need not go much into the technicalities, but certain rules of thought are very important. Like, he gave us 3 rules of thought, 3 rules. One is called the law of identity. These are all obvious. You, me, anybody, a child also will understand it. The thing is, A is A. It is called identity. A thing is identical itself. A is A. It is identity. Okay. Then it is not equal to something else. A is not equal to B. There is another thing. A, the thing cannot be A and not A. It's called contradiction. Law of contradiction. Law of identity, law of contradiction. The thing cannot be A and not A. It should be either A. That's all. You don't say simultaneously it is both A and not A. So it's called the law of contradiction. Then, yes. Then there is another law. It is called the law of the excluded medium. Law of the excluded medium. Yes. Yes. So these are all simply the logic. Logic. So all these things Aristotle established and he codified, and it was written in a book called Organon. That Organon contains lot of other things also. Apart from these rules of thought and rules of influence, it contains a great deal of things which are useful for all scientific deliberation of any subject. That means logic is a premier subject. It is common to all the subjects. It is the queen of sciences. So without logic, so it goes to the credit of Aristotle that he established this logic. So which you have to understand. Today, even in all the universities, when you take philosophy as a subject, then you have logic. Logic is one of the subjects, one of the papers you have to study it as a logic. Of course, logic has developed a great deal. It's not that today you have to go and study Aristotelian logic. Logic developed very highly, and at least now I can tell you, later even in the Greek period, the Stoic philosophers established a type of logic known as the propositional logics, the propositions, statements. One statement is true, false, how do you combine statements with certain operators like and, or, all these things. We are not going into the technicalities. So Stoic people developed logic, and later, in the 20th century, Frege mathematician, German mathematician, and Bertrand Russell, the English mathematician and philosopher, they developed a mathematical logic. Okay? So logic has grown. Not that we are still having but Aristotle was the person who gave a foundation for it, and he established it as a separate science. So that is as far as this logic is concerned. Yes. Then what happens? It's not only with logic. Logic is the basic thing. In logic, then further, he went into several areas of thought. Like I can tell you, the most famous thing is what they call as physics and metaphysics. Even physics. But don't say whether today physics students should read Aristotle. No. Today, when you go to a physics course, Aristotle is only a historical interest. I have to be very frank with you. See, don't expect that if somebody was a great philosopher or a man of great learning, whatever he said was true or is true eternally. No, it cannot be. Knowledge always, we progress from error to truth. That we have to understand. So nobody is infallible. So today, a person studying even in high school, he will not be studying the physics of Aristotle. But Aristotle started it. But what after all is physics? Physics means about nature. About nature. That is the beginning. The Greek word physics means only nature. Nature contains everything, all the things. What is the nature of the substance? What is this, that, and all. So he started it. So they will also call him as the father of physics also. Father of any of the subjects he dealt with, because he clearly defined them, he gave certain principles and he established them as separate fields of study. So, one thing, whatever Aristotle did at the beginning, it is still relevant because he gave a good classification of things. That is what you have to understand. He classified all the subjects. That is physics. Then, they say metaphysics. Now, it is very easy to understand what exactly is metaphysics. You should know how the word itself comes. Aristotle did not call what today we call as metaphysics. He did not call it. He had a lot of, books on physics, and later, after dealing with physics, he dealt with certain things which he called as first principles of philosophy. Very, very, very basic principles of philosophy. Now, later, the editor of Aristotle's books, physics books are there. Meta means after. After physics, the metaphysics books, the first philosophy books were kept, so he called them metaphysics. That's all. That is the origin of the term metaphysics. But what is this metaphysics? This metaphysics only is dealing with a thing. See, all things exist, all substances exist. But what is existence? What is it called? The being in philosophical language. So, what is this being? So, he wanted to analyze. That is called the first philosophy, and that is metaphysics. Please understand the origin of the term. So there are many metaphysical thoughts of Aristotle. We will deal with them something in the course of this talk. Okay. So I told you about his logic, and I told you about his physics. His physics is not relevant. I need not trouble you with all his physical theories, which are not later scientific things proved that you need not take them very seriously. Okay. Then he is very famous, for his, theory of the causes, causation. So it's known in philosophy as the theory of four causes. Cause means, see, in the world you always see the world is a world of changes. Things keep on changing. An acorn, the seed of an oak tree, is a small thing. It is put. It has a potential and it grows into a very big tree. So, or animals you take right from the womb of the mother. It grows. It's a very fascinating things. Fascinating things. So for everything there is a cause. But he generalized this and he gave a very beautiful example in the theory of four causes. So I will explain to you in a very short way. Take for example just some marble. When you see these marble blocks and all that, there is nothing in it. It is a block, that is all. It is material. You don't have so much interest. It is some mineral or some material. Okay, it is that. But then with marbles you make so many things, na? So that means first you have to have that matter, that substance you should have. So that is why he will call it, if you are making something out of marble, it is called the material cause. So the first cause of anything is there should be some raw material. So that is called the material cause. Okay. Then you have an intention, it has to be made as a, say, statue of Alexander. I have to make a statue of Alexander. So you think of the form of Alexander and all. So it comes to that shape. So it is called the formal cause. So that should be there for anything to make. That means even when we want to make something, first thing is our thought, our intention to do something and what we are going to do. So that he calls it as form, F-O-R-M. So the formal cause. Then there should be, lot of tools and somebody also. A sculptor should be there. Anybody and everybody cannot make a statue. The sculptor should be there and he should have the proper tools. That is called the efficient cause. Then Finally, the sculptor does everything and the statue is ready. Then it is called the final cross. So he says, in the making or in the evolution, in the growth, this is just, he gave an example. He says it is true of nature also. So there are always the four causes. That means the important thing, if you see, the form, F-O-R-M, form is a very important aspect of Aristotelian philosophy. There is a form and there is a matter. Remember, matter and form, they are very important concepts in Aristotelian philosophy. We can still go further into it. Now, several times I have spoken to you on Plato. So, Plato's one of the basic things in Plato's philosophy is, Plato talked about forms, F-O-R-M. He, in his sense, when something is beautiful, he will say the beautiful thing which is here participates in beauty, in the form of beauty, ideal beauty. But where is that form? According to Plato, that form is a separate ideal beauty, is somewhere in the realm, in the region of forms. So it was a little mystical, it is very mystical. So the pure form is somewhere else, but this actual object participates in beauty, that is where it is beautiful. So this is the teaching of his master, Plato. But Aristotle completely disagreed with him. He said, I am a man of the earth. Okay. I don't understand this some form existing somewhere. As a result, he did not deny that there is no form. He said the form is there, okay, I agree with Plato. That only gives that particular quality to that object. But matter, in any substance, the matter and form are combined. So that is Aristotle's, which of course appeals more to the common sense. For us also it appeals. You can't separate the form and matter. The form and matter, they are together. So this is clearly a great departure from the Plato's philosophy. That's what you have to understand. So in Aristotelian thinking, everything, the form is also there with the matter. Without form, the matter will have some form, only the degree differs. So matter and form, they are always together. So the form is like the soul of a thing. Matter is a mere matter, in a substance. The substance is always a combination of matter and form. This is very basic to Aristotelian philosophy. As a result, the substances in the world, in the universe, the beings in the world, he puts them in a hierarchy. Hierarchy means from the lowest to the highest. He says at a very, very low level, you have simply some matter without form. That's what he says. Just some matter, without much of the component of the form. But in the when you go in the hierarchy, there will be one unicellular thing, multicellular organism, amoeba, this one, and the aquatic things, and the animals, and vertebrates, and all that. Finally, man will come. So, man ascends very high in the hierarchy, okay? And he is not simply your matter, the flesh and bones and other things. There is a particular form, and the wonderful feature about the form of man is his rationality, his reasoning power. That way, man is completely different from the amoeba. You have so that's why you are special. And Aristotle thought that always the lower form serves the upper. In the hierarchy, the lower is there to serve the higher. That is his philosophy. So, man is at the pinnacle, and he says beyond man is God. And God, he says, is only form, means spirit, only form, not matter. And his conception of God is peculiar. He says God is only thinking, contemplation. It is the highest, and he is the ultimate thing in the universe. So all the others are subordinate to it. Of course, he doesn't talk of any personal God and all that, but it is a philosophic concept. The highest thing is only form, and that is God. That is his theology. His theology, it is little difficult, we cannot see eye to eye with it, but at least he says this, the God is, he doesn't say there is no God. He says God is the highest form. So this is his theory about matter and form. Here what it implies is everything in the universe has got what is known as, there is a potentiality in anything. Like in physics, you know about the potential energy and kinetic energy. Water stored at a great height, stored in a dam or something, it has got great potential. When it flows, then you can convert that energy, it becomes kinetic energy. The potential energy becomes kinetic energy. You can convert into electricity and all that. So this is just an example for the modern mind. So like that, there is what is known as, in substances, what is known as potentiality. So the best example which is given is acorn. Acorn is the seed of the oak tree. You see, it is such a small thing, but so much information is there. So it has got potentiality. As an acorn, seed, it is nothing, you just see it is a tiny thing. But you put it there, then it grows and it becomes a big oak tree. The oak tree is called the actuality and the acorn is called the potentiality. So this can be extended to many things in the universe. There is something known as potentiality and there is an actuality. And this change from potentiality to actuality is normally the growth. And that is the movement. So Aristotle's theory of movement, motion is this. Motion does not necessarily mean displacement from one place to another. Motion means all changes in the universe. So this universe is a universe of change. Now this change is directed towards a purpose. That's very important. In Aristotle's philosophy, see the substances, they have, when I said potentiality, they have the potentiality to become something. So that means the purpose is ingrained there, which you can call it as the form. The form has that purpose, and in the movement, what happens? The final thing emerges. The acorn becomes oak tree, big tree, because of the movement. So all growth is movement. From a tiny seed to a living being, it is movement. So movement is not simply movement from one place to another. Remember. So he classifies movement, and of course it is a way of thought. It is a way of thought, you have to understand. Philosophy is nothing but a way of looking at things. He looks at things this way. There is nothing like right or wrong. You may criticize it. You may bring some other examples and say, I don't agree. That's a different thing. It is up to you. But he, according to him, his movement is nothing but change. This universe is a universe of change. So, coming to movement, again, his theology becomes very interesting. He says the world you see, all movement. Planets move around. Of course, his cosmology is different. I will come to it later. You have to tell me when the time is up, because I forgot to see my watch.
Sure, sir.
When the time is up, please tell me, because I just did
You
not,
have another 15
did
minutes.
not another
15 minutes, sir.
another 15 minutes. Okay, I have got it. Another 15 minutes. Now this is very interesting. I said let's come to his theology. His theology is like this. See, you see lot of movement, in the universe. Now, if we understand the movement, if I give a push to something, it moves. So I can move. So I am a mover in that case. Lot of interactions between particles and things start moving. So he says, A is moved by B, B is moved by C, C is moved by D. He says, you go on, at least somewhere you have to stop. So there should be a first mover whom he calls as unmoved mover. There should be somebody, who himself is not moved by anything. That's why he is called an unmoved mover. So that unmoved mover is God. So, see his way of thinking. So this is called the cosmological argument for the existence of God in Western philosophy. Aristotle's argument for the existence of God is that all are moving. So there should be a mover who himself is not moved. So that unmoved mover is God. So that is his theology. And he tells so many things about God. Earlier also I told you, the God means pure spirit. And what is he doing? He says all pure contemplation, thinking. According to Aristotle, thinking is the highest activity. Highest activity for anyone is thinking. So that's why he puts reason on a very high pedestal. So, and God is a God of thinking, a God of contemplation, and he is the ultimate. Okay. Of course, he doesn't tell us you have to pray to God and all. This concept is not there, in Aristotle, please. So it's a very peculiar thing. Jesus, God is the ultimate thing. Then, I told you about the potentiality, actuality, matter and form. Yes. Then, I told you also about his theory of four causes, which are there, which everybody should know. Whoever says that we know something about Aristotle, or something about Aristotle. Now, we can go to his other interesting things about ethics, because finally we are interested in ethics also. Apart from these metaphysical concepts, which another philosopher will say, I don't believe in all these things. It is all high speculation. Certain people will refuse to listen to all these things. Especially if you start reading Bertrand Russell's History of Western Philosophy, he has got some 54 pages on Aristotelian thought, and where he condemns him like anything. So now I have to tell you why Russell condemned him before going to his ethics. Okay. Russell tells, rightly so, see, Aristotle was a great pioneer, no doubt. He established many subjects, father of many subjects. But what happened in the Greek world, there is a period, up to 1st century, from 1st or 2nd century to 6th century, the European world did not know much about Aristotle. But Aristotle was translated into Arabic, in the Islamic world, Arabic, and among the Arabian philosophers, both Islamic and the Jewish philosophers, Aristotle was a very great name. They translated all his metaphysics and works, and they used it to defend their theology. Okay. So Aristotle was greatly influential. Later, after 16th century only, Aristotle's Arabic things were translated into Latin, and the European scholars came to know much about Aristotle's work, the later scholars. And the Christians, the Catholic Christians used Aristotle, especially a theologian who is well known in the Christian world, Catholic theologian known as Thomas Aquinas. Thomas Aquinas made use of this Aristotle. So he was very influential, very, very influential. The result is, whatever Aristotle said, they did not dispute. So he became a very great authority. So that was his undoing. Since he was a great authority, the Aristotelian conceptions hindered the growth of science. I can give you a very simple example. Galileo Galilei. You know how he suffered, the scientist Galileo, because his view was entirely different. Why his view was different? Because I did not talk to you much about Aristotelian cosmology. According to the Aristotelian cosmology, it is a geocentric universe. Earth is at the center of everything. It is not moving. Whereas all the other things, the moon, the sun, are moving in different spheres. It is a circular orbit. And finally, the final thing is the fixed stars in the final sphere. So this is a sort of cosmology. Now, this stood in the way. They said, Aristotle said it. Who are you, Galileo? So Galileo had to seek the pardon of the church in order to survive. Otherwise, they would have killed him. Of course, he was not killed, but he was put in prison. He had to undergo punishment. Like that, there was one another scientist. He was burnt at stake. I don't know, Tycho Brahe or somebody. I'm not very sure. Bruno, sorry. Yes, I mistake. Yeah, Bruno was burnt at stake. So many seekers after truth suffered because of the authority of Aristotle. That is why Bertrand Russell does not have a kind word to Aristotle. So he picks up holes in everything, including Aristotle's logic, its metaphysics, in physics, everything including ethics, all that he picks up holes and he gives a wholesale condemnation. But he says you can't blame everything, Aristotle for everything, because the other people took him as authority. So it hindered the growth of science. So that is one thing we have to understand, but that is not his fault. That is not his fault. He himself always favored an experiment. He himself was not dogmatic. He was always for experiment. He was always for gathering knowledge through experience also. That is why we can call him as the father of empiricism also. So he started science. It is not that he closed his eyes and said whatever I say is true and you have to accept. He was different from Plato. Plato was purely a contemplative man. Although he said many things about republic and all that. Of course, he did not agree with Plato. He said the king need not be a philosopher. He can take advice from the philosopher. He need not himself be a philosopher. So, he criticized others left and right, to Aristotle himself. So, you can't completely blame Aristotle, because the others took him as authority and that hindered science. Now, coming to see how Aristotle interacted with Plato. So, he would have known about Socrates only through Plato. So, Aristotle's opinion about Socrates, you see, it is very interesting. Socrates asked questions, okay, but gave no replies. He never replied because he lacked knowledge. He was very blunt. He did not know. Of course, Socrates also said, I do not know. So he never had knowledge. He thought always definitions of virtue. What is this? What is it? Then he will not agree. He also will not tell. So he leaves the others, what they call aporia, impasse. You go to a dead end and you can't go anywhere. So that is what he did. And he was occupied with ethical matters and with questions, and not with questions about the natural world. So he did not know. So that is it. So that is his frank opinion about Socrates. So you cannot blame Aristotle because he hindered science, because the others should have disagreed with him. Just as Aristotle disagreed with Plato in the theory of forms, others also should have disagreed with him and science should have progressed, but unfortunately there was a stagnation in Europe in scientific development because of Aristotle, because people believed him as an authority. Now only 5 minutes I will take, then I am concluding. Now what is important, in his ethics, he wrote quite a few books on ethics. What is important for Aristotle is man has the highest faculty of reasoning. So our final aim, to live a life of reasoning and happiness. So nobody can quarrel with it. It is called eudaimonia in Greek language, eudaimonia, to be happy, that a fulfilled life, and all your potential, everybody has got a potential, you should find an expression in the actuality. That means you have to flower into a wonderful human being. So that is the general tenor of Aristotelian ethics, and the society means the government, the politics should aim at that the happiness of people, that they live a good reasoned life. And he was not against pleasure, but he says not, momentary pleasure is not that important. On overall happy life. Overall happy life. That means everything is important. Health, wealth, all these things are important. Nothing to be discarded. So you have to aim at a happy life, and you have to be virtuous. And virtue, he always said, it is a mean. It is called the golden mean in Aristotelian philosophy. Should be a mean. That means courage means, he says, it doesn't mean you have to be foolhardy, like you will do anything, so daring that you will do anything, or you can't be a coward, hesitating to do anything. So it is just a mean between cowardice and foolhardiness. Like that, he lists a lot of qualities of one extreme and another extreme, and he says the virtue is in between. So he talks, just like Socrates, he talks about different virtues, he talks about justice, and he talks about politics also. I believe he gathered the constitutions of so many countries and studied them, studied them. See, I forgot to tell you the other areas of his studies, ethics. 3-4 books he wrote. Nicomachean Ethics. Nicomachus is his son. His father also named as Nicomachus. His son is also Nicomachus' name. So he, I think, later edited or compiled the Nicomachean Ethics, Eudemian Ethics, History of Animals, Metaphysics, then on interpretation, on heavens, on the parts of animals, organon, logic, which I told you, physics, poetics and rhetoric. He studied, and functions of the poetry. What is the function of the tragedy? And there is a term, those who have studied aesthetics, they will know catharsis, purging of the emotions. When you see some drama or something, you start crying. When you are identifying yourself with the hero or heroine. That term catharsis comes from Aristotle only. So Aristotle did a great deal of research in rhetoric, right? Poetics, writing poetry and all that. So she's yes, posterior analytics, prior analytics, politics, sophistical refutations, refuting some fallacies and all that. So even economics. So he did so much in varied fields. That is what remarkable genius. Only still the classification of subjects which he did at that time, still it is relevant. So in spite of the defect that he hindered the progress of science, no doubt he was a great thinker, and we should know something about him, though you need not study in detail whatever he did, which may not be relevant in the light of the modern developments in science and other fields. but he was a great pioneer, and we all can profit by knowing something about what he did. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. As usual, T.K. Jayaraman sir made his lecture very interesting. For the last 1 hour, he spoke about Aristotle, a overview of his life, but he was able to dwell about the prevailing conditions in Greek itself at that time. And he took us through a whirlwind of what Aristotle was, his thoughts was. He spoke about various fun facts, like he spoke about a picture by Raphael wherein he is pointing towards the earth, whereas his own guru, that is Plato, was pointing towards the sky. So he brought out the various type of aspects of Aristotle, his multifaceted views, and his own life wherein he was a scientist who observed plants and animals to start with, and later on he went on to be a tutor to Alexander. He comes back and then starts or sets up his own research center called as Lyceum, wherein he was able to dwell upon metaphysics, cosmology, ethics. He wrote umpteen number of books on various aspects, and he was also able to be a reference point for people who came after him for several centuries. So that was the effect of Aristotle, and Sri T.K. Jayaraman sir in his own way was able to also touch upon aspects which are much more difficult to express. So in his own inimitable style, he was able to talk about aspects which are not so relevant or acceptable in today's context, but was able to speak about it as a matter of fact that these were the prevailing conditions during those periods. So a very warm, we would like to extend or convey our thanks to T.K. Jayaraman sir on behalf of Indian Institute of World Culture for having taken us through Aristotle and the overall period in which he stayed and his effect on the world itself in just over an hour. So it was a very interesting talk and a very useful talk to all of us. I am sure that all our audience who are there online on YouTube and also people here have enjoyed your talk very much, sir. So once again, on behalf of the Institute and myself, a very big thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. For the benefit of the audience, I would like to quickly also draw your attention for the upcoming program which is planned. As part of our Sarvodaya Day, which is happening day after tomorrow, that is Sunday, January 30th, in the evening, we have a program, a lecture program on re-invoking Gandhi, Dialogues with the Divine. So the speaker for this particular lecture is Dr. Deepthi Navaratna, who is the Regional Director at IGNCA. So I request all of you to make time and also be part of this online program on 30th January, that is day after tomorrow, Sunday, evening 6 p.m. So once again, thanks for your patient hearing and a very good evening going on. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Very good introduction and very good conclusion.
No, it is just a picking up.
You speak quite well. Very well.